Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Uneducated Guess, a show that will hopefully acquaint you and I to the very complex subjects that make up the subject of math. Today's video is going to go in depth to the subject of fractions, and they're very complicated. I know a lot of people I've talked to that don't really understand it fully, so I'm going to try to go in depth and explain some of the stuff that I found, and hopefully you walk away from this video knowing a little bit more than you did originally. So what exactly is a fraction? A fraction is a representation of a value that is greater than, equal to, or smaller than the value of 1. And there are three ways to write them. These are decimals, writing it as in decimal form, writing it in fraction form, or writing it as a ratio. Decimals and ratios will get their own video. In this video, I'm going to be more focused on the actual fraction form and how to use that. And it's the rules that surround the fraction form and writing it. So how do we write a fraction in fraction form? It's very easy. We just need a numerator and a denominator. The numerator is the number on top. The denominator is the number on bottom. These, of course, instead of x and y, would be represented by values. If the values are equal, the fraction would be equal to 1. So if the numerator was 6 and the denominator was 6 also, the fraction will be equal to 1. The little line in between the numerator and the denominator is actually called the division line, or is also sometimes called the vinculum. If you really want to sound smart, use that term. I like it a lot. So a good way to think about fractions is to think of a pie that has been divided into several slices. This pie right here has been divided into thirds. The thirds and sixths is what I'm going to be really using in this video a lot, just because it's easy. It's easier to use, at least for me. So here's a pie. It's been divided into thirds. Now, if we have 0 slices, we can write this as 0 over 3, using the mental rule that the denominator is equal to the total number of slices, and the numerator is equal to how many slices you actually have out of the total. So to write 0 slices, we would write 0 out of, or 0 over 3. Another way, along the same line of thinking, we would write 2 out of 3 slices as 2 over 3, over that vinculum in the middle. Now, arithmetic with fractions is kind of tricky. In order to do it, we first need to know how to equalize the denominators. It sounds complicated, but it's actually very easy. Equalizing the denominators is the same as saying making the denominators the same. Now, in order to make the denominators the same, we simply have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number that will make the denominators in a certain math problem involving fractions the same. So we have 1 over 3 plus 2 over 6. Now, in order to make the denominators the same, we need to multiply 3 by 2 to make it 6. So we would multiply 1 over 3 by 2 over 2, and that would give us 2 over 6. So instead of writing 1 over 3 plus 2 over 6, we would write 2 over 6 plus 2 over 6. Now, the reason we do this is just because it makes it a lot easier, and it gives us a chance to simplify in the end, and that gives us a more accurate answer. Now, for adding numbers, first we need to equalize the denominators into fractions, and then just add the numerators. Now, side note, it's very important that you only add the numerators and not the denominators. Adding both of them, both of the two values together, will give you a completely different value, and that's not what you really want. You'll get the answer completely wrong. So, as an example, 2 over 3 plus 4 over 6. First, we want to equalize the denominators, so we multiply the numerator and the denominator, in this case, by 2, and that will give us 4 over 6 plus 4 over 6. And that equals 8 over 6. Now, an interesting thing about fractions is that we sometimes get these hybrids called improper fractions. It's called an improper fraction because the numerator is greater than the denominator, and that is a complete misstatement of what we're trying to say. It would be like saying, I have a mouse and I also have a keyboard, so I have a keyboard mouse. Like, it's one thing, but that is completely incorrect. So a way to write this correctly, instead of having it improper, is by thinking of how many times the denominator goes into the numerator. So in this case, 6 goes into 8 one time with a remainder of 2. So to write this, we would write a whole number, which would be 1 in this case, since 6 goes into 8 only one time, and a remainder 2 out of 6 of those pie slices we just talked about. Now, at the end, to finish the problem, we need to do a reverse equalization called simplifying, which is what I was talking about earlier. And that is basically dividing the numerator and the denominator by a single value that will get it to its simplest form, which is it's the proper way to write it. You might lose points if you write it in an improper form. If you wrote it as 1 and 2 over 6 on a test, for example, you might get marked down a few points. So you want to remember to simplify your fraction to its simplest form. And that's simply, right here, it's one step dividing them by 2. Now, this can get very complicated once you get into bigger numbers and bigger fractions, but it's the same principle, and it just takes a few more steps. Subtraction with fractions is very similar to addition, except we subtract the numerators. And again, only subtract the numerators. Don't subtract both the numerators and the denominators, because that will give us a completely different value, and that's not what we want. So first we want to equalize the denominators. So in this case we have 4 over 6 minus 1 over 3. And equalizing that by multiplying 1 over 3 by 2, we get 2 out of 6, so the denominators are now the same. So we have 4 over 6 minus 2 over 6, and that equals, since we're only subtracting the numerators, 2 over 6. Now, of course, we need to do our reverse simplification, or equalization, rather, simplifying the fraction from 2 out of 6, dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 2 will give us 1 out of 3, and that would be our final answer. And thank you for watching. This is only part 1 of my fractions tutorial. I'm going to be making several tutorials on this channel, each with their own subject. Comment down below a math subject that you want me to cover, and I'll do some research, or if I've already learned it in school and I know it, I'll just go over it and explain it the best I can. In the next part 2 for this fractions tutorial, I'll be covering how to divide fractions, how to multiply them, and how to use more advanced systems such as parentheses and our equations. So that's all for next time. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.